is Monty Hipsch in conversation with Drew McPherson, the General Manager of iseekPlant.
Hello, today I'm talking with Drew McPherson, the General Manager of iseekPlant, and we're going to cover off everything about wet and dry hire. Drew, can you first tell us the difference between wet and dry hire in plant and equipment?
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best. I think one of the analogies that I like to use is with wet and dry hire is assimilating it with hiring a car. So dry hire would be the same as if you needed a car and you needed to drive, and you needed to get someplace. You would, a dry hire arrangement would be the same as going to Hertz rental and renting the car. In a dry hire arrangement, you drive it and you pay for the fuel, and you pay, like a daily or weekly rate to rent the machine, or in this instance, a car. Whereas wet hire would be more like if you wanted to get someplace, you'd call an Uber, and somebody else would come along and drive the vehicle for you and pay for the fuel, and you just simply paid an hourly rate or a per kilometre rate for the car. So wet and dry hire is the same. Dry hire is you drive it yourself and supply the fuel, and you pay a weekly or monthly rate. And wet hire is an operator comes with that machine and does the work for you, and you pay them for their time.
Now, I love the analogy of renting from Hertz or Avis and Uber. Is there anything else that's typically included in wet hire when it's not a personal vehicle like I drive, but the machinery that you folks make available through iseekPlant?
Look, wet hire is you're paying for a service, and you're paying for the skill of the operator, I guess that's how it differs from driving a car. Anybody can drive a car, and everybody's quite proficient at driving a car, but a lot of the time you have a preference for wet hire because the skill in the operation of the machine is very important. So I guess that's one of the differences.
Yeah, that's a really good one, because I'm comfortable getting in a rental motor vehicle, but if it's a big piece of heavy machinery, obviously, and there's so many different varieties, being familiar with that piece of equipment and then having skill to operate it would be a real plus, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. We quite often see in the sort of residential inquiries that go through iseekPlant, we quite often see people that need to use an excavator or a bobcat at home, and they're trying to dry hire it to save some money, and they're trying to just rent the machine and try to operate the machine themselves. And I laugh to myself because they think they're going to save money, but if they were to just get a wet hire guy in, what would take a wet hire owner-operator who drives a machine every day of the week, it might take him 4 hours to do the job. Somebody who's unskilled and needs to learn how to operate the machine, that's going to take them 2 days, and they're going to leave a huge mess and probably break something. So I think it's false economy sometimes when people preference dry hire.
Right. Now iseekPlant trades all across Australia in virtually every state. So are there any rules and regulations relative to wet and dry hire, and do they vary from state to state?
Rules and regulations are fairly straightforward. You've got to be ticketed and competent to operate a machine. So whoever's operating the machine's got to prove not only that they have a license to operate it, but they're competent to operate it, particularly on construction sites. And competency is it's a tricky thing to assess, but it's more important than having a license. And that's pretty standard across most states. As far as preferences go, I think I see more dry hire occurring in Western Australia because most of their construction economy is based around mining, and mine sites need to dry hire equipment because they need to typically use the machine for a long period of time, so they're better off dry hiring a machine and getting their own operators in to do the work on a long-term basis. So I think in terms of preferences, Western Australia would probably over-index in dry hire compared to the others. And I think, generally speaking, wet and dry hire preferences fluctuate with the type of work that's happening in Australia.
Right, okay. And it's just as a curiosity for somebody who's not familiar with heavy machinery, be it wet or dry, what is included in the wet hire? Is it just the driver, or the operator, or do they include the fuel and the operating costs, or what's included in a wet hire versus a dry hire, I guess?
Well, I guess traditional wet hire it comes with the equipment and the operator, and the owner of the equipment supplies the fuel. So that's a typical wet hire agreement. There is, grey areas, and there is flexibility with most, contracts in plant hire. There is certainly times when a contractor will, ask for wet hire, but they can provide the fuel themselves because they have other things on site that they're fueling anyway. But typically, the traditional wet hire agreement is machine, operator, and fuel supplied by the equipment owner.
Right. Now, this is a biased question, hopefully, towards you. Leaving WA out of it because of the dry hire environment and their mining construction stuff, how does iseekPlant, you talked about the competency of the operator, how do you folks evaluate that when people are using your platform, and how confident are you that the wet hire arrangement is going to have a competent operator? What do you guys do to help ensure that?
That's a really difficult one for us to handle, actually, because we don't get much contact with the end user, so we don't get to see how they perform, and competency and quality of an operator is one of the most important things in equipment rental. We've dabbled in an endorsement feature on the site, so that's a publicly used endorsement feature. We try to steer away from ratings and reviews in equipment rental because there's two sides to every story, and we find that in the online space, people only get on and rate somebody if they're annoyed, and there's very little positive endorsements floating around out there in the internet space. It's usually a place where a lot of trash gets spoken. But what we've done is we've built an endorsement feature which is similar in a way to what LinkedIn uses. LinkedIn uses a positive only endorsement feature. So in a nutshell, if you can't say something nice, then you can't say anything at all. So we allow the public to endorse a company, say something nice about a particular company, but they're not allowed to say anything bad about them. So you can see on company profiles when you're searching on iseekPlant, if a company has several endorsements, you can read those endorsements and you can get a comfort factor, get a little comfort with the fact that several other people have enjoyed their service. And then there's other plant hire companies in their tiles that don't have any endorsements, so obviously they've struggled to get any positive reviews at all. So that's about as good as we can get at the moment in terms of operator quality and competency.
Yep. Okay. Good. Drew, we're just coming into the silly season, Christmas time, 2017, moving into 2018. Are you seeing any trends, wet, dry hire, because of all the volume of machinery that goes through your platform, through iseekPlant?
Yeah, I would say wet hire is more popular at the moment in Australia, generally speaking, particularly on the East Coast. When we launched iseekPlant in 2012, I would have said that the preference was for dry hire. Back in 2012, 2013, we were still building a few coal mines, and there's a lot of long-term projects that were on. And when you see long-term projects and mining projects, you typically see a bit more uptake in dry hire. At the moment, we've got a lot of road projects and infrastructure projects that are typically 6 to 12 months in duration. And anything of that sort of duration, the contractors that are building these projects, they can't afford to keep their own operators, so they prefer to get a wet hire person in to do the equipment work. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of wet hire work. There's still also a lot of dry hire work, but I would say it's a little bit over-indexing in wet hire, and I think it'll probably stay that way well into 2018.
Right. One last question: is there any what dangers or things do people need to be worried about, whether they're wet hiring in a contract or a subcontract environment? Is there what due diligence top 3 have you got for people that are in that space?
I think it all comes down to safety and competency again.
Good.
The wet hire, the thing I like about wet hire, and the thing that I liked about wet hire when I was renting equipment as an engineer, was that the wet hire operators are typically smaller companies, and for short-term projects, because they live and die by their sword, because they live and die by their reputation and the quality of operation that they offer, they're far more reliable, and you typically get a lot better quality out of them. That's not to say that dry hire suppliers don't supply quality, but I'm just saying, I guess the jockey that's operating the thing is more likely to be of higher quality when it's somebody who makes their bread and butter out of operating a machine.
Right.
Whereas with dry hire, there is a lot of risk that if you're trying to operate it yourself and you're not particularly competent and you're using a machine that you're not used to, you're more likely to break something on the machine, or you're more likely to use it incorrectly and cause either environmental damage or some sort of safety damage. And I guess with dry hire, you gotta get used to the machine. I used to operate. I used to actually quite good at operating bobcats. I used to spend a lot of time on bobcats when I was working for my father's company, and I only ever operated one kind of machine. It was a Toyota Husky, it's a Toyota 8 Husky, and they have they have a different operating configuration to other bobcats or other skid steer loaders. And I was quite good at the Huskies, and I was quite quick and quite safe at operating them. But if I get in a case skid steer loader or a cat skid steer loader, I'm a hazard. I'm a hazard to myself, and I'm a hazard to everyone around me. So because the levers are in different positions, and they're either joystick control or pedal control, and just simply getting used to a different brand of machine, you can lose a lot of efficiency in getting to know the machine, and you can use a lot. It's obviously can be unsafe when you're learning to operate a machine you're unfamiliar with. So I would say dry hire is not for the faint-hearted. Wet hire is for people that want to ensure that the operators turn up on time and do a good job.
That's great. Drew, what can I say? Thank you for the education. I really appreciate it, and hope to talk to you in the future on another topic.
Yeah, okay, Monty.
Thanks, Drew.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Bye, mate.
Bye.
That was Monty Hipsch in conversation with Drew McPherson, the General Manager of iseekPlant.